Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Jeanette Lenoir with ePluribus America, and today we are talking with the author, award-winning author, let me
yes.
myself, award-winning author, Susan Goldfein, and she is now touring really with her second book called How to Complain When There's Nothing to Complain About. So Susan, thank you so much for joining me here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So this is book number 2. Your first one was How Old Am I in Dog Years? And
Yeah.
what was so amazing for me is that this is really your second win. Can you talk about your career as an author and how you got started?
Yes, of course I can, and I will. It was an accident. It was not planned. It wasn't anything I dreamt about. It wasn't in my bucket list or one of the things I'm going to do when I retire. It was very serendipitous, actually. What happened was I worked practically my whole life, and I was in healthcare. I was a speech pathologist, and I evolved into to teaching and consulting. And my last job as a consultant, I was kind of up there. I was thinking about retirement, but I wasn't quite ready yet. Maybe 69 years old, something like that. And suddenly, retirement was forced upon me. Funding ran low. I was working for a not-for-profit. Funding ran low. They had to let me go. And I didn't know what to do with myself, quite frankly, because I was so used to working that there was this big hole in my life that I didn't know how to fill. Plus the fact that we had relocated to Florida, which was also something brand new that I was getting used to. So I was kind of not in a good place, let me put it that way, trying to adjust to these new events in my life. Anyway, I discovered a writing class locally, and I thought, well, I always kind of like to write. Let me see if, I can still do it. I went to the writing class, and I started producing these short, funny essays in response to the teacher's assignments, basically. And the feedback she gave me was incredibly encouraging. She said, I think you found your voice. In other words, suggesting that maybe this is what I should think about doing. And I rather enjoyed it, and I kept doing it. And then I had this pile of essays. I had the pile of essays on my desk. I did submit a few, and they were rejected. I sent one to the New York Times Magazine when they had the back page stories, and a couple of other places, and nobody picked them up. And I thought, I think I'm going to start my own website. And I knew nothing about it, really, except that I knew people were blogging. And I thought, well, why not me? And I got some help with getting it going. And then it was up and running, and there I was. And I was, producing these essays twice a month. And this is about now, I would say, 9 years ago. And I've been at it ever since. And it's a second career, and what they call the third stage of my life. And it's been lots and lots of fun. And it's taken me places that, I never thought I never planned on going. I never thought I'd go, things I never thought about. The books came about as a result of encouragement from some of my friends and readers saying, you should compile these, put them in a book, that would be fun. And I did.
This is absolutely wonderful. Not a lot of people, get to say that they get a second career, a third career. One thing that I thought was very interesting, you mentioned being forced into retirement. You had a connection there with Bernie Madoff. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, yes, that's part of taking a very sad event and just finding a little bit of humor in it. Yeah, the reason I got let go was because at the time I was working as a consultant for the New York City Alzheimer's Association. And as a charity, they depend a lot on funding, on private donations. And this was in New York, this was in Manhattan. And they had pretty, wealthy funding sources there until Bernie Madoff happened in 2008. And then, people were not as wealthy as they thought they were, unfortunately, and many people lost everything. And that's when the funding started to dry up. And so sometimes, if I'm giving a talk somewhere, I'll say, and I owe this all to Bernie Madoff. It's like my new career. I owe this all to Bernie Madoff. And then I go on to explain why. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened. It forced me into retirement that I was considering, but wasn't quite ready for. Like most people, I felt like I wanted to retire on my own terms,
Right.
and not be made to retire or let go, as it were. And until that happened, I never fully appreciated how much working meant to me, until I didn't have it anymore. And it's very hard. It's a hard adjustment.
It is. I'm actually reminded of the story of the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG.
Yeah.
And she talks about how her life was shaped through something similar, like what you're just explaining. She couldn't get a job anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So she was placed, she wanted to stay in New York, but she had to move here. She was placed in the the judicial system here in DC, and so that led her to her position to become a justice. So that's very interesting how unfortunate situations can squeeze some goodness out of us, like like olive oil. Olives don't like being squeezed, I'm sure, but the olive oil is fantastic. So, so now you are an award-winning author. You started your blog at 71. No one can say that. We are living in a world where it seems like there's no room for people who are heading into retirement or during retirement. How are you able to do this?
Well, in a way, I guess it's easier. I'm as a writer, I'm independent, and I wasn't looking for anybody to rehire me. Trying to find another job at that age, when that which I think would have been very difficult and very frustrating. I also was not necessarily interested, as some people, in opening up a business in order to economically achieve, another great career in that kind of sense. So I think I had the freedom and the mindset to, I was open to it, I guess. As I say, I didn't plan it, but I was certainly open to it. And it filled a void. It filled a void. And fortunately, I did not have to be a breadwinner, which I think, is a big deal. I could play with this thing at least until it got going. And I didn't have to worry about where my next dollar was coming from. So in that sense, I was very fortunate.
It certainly makes a big difference when you have support. So that's very lucky on your side. Now, you published your first book. Can you talk about how you went about doing that?
Oh, that was
a million dog years.
Yeah, how old am I in dog years? Can I explain where the title came from?
Yes, please.
Okay, I had written an essay that I had posted on my website, and it was about, at the time, I owned 2 Labrador retrievers who were beautiful, but they were getting on in years, as was I and my husband. And when we got these dogs as 8-week-old puppies, 1 year one, then the next year the other. and they were rambunctious, and as puppies are.
Right.
And my husband and I would look at each other and say, maybe we made a mistake. Like maybe we're too old for this. It's like raising a toddler, when you're a grandparent or something. It takes a lot of energy. Anyway, but we managed and we did very well. And then we hit a certain point living with our dogs when I noticed that our dogs were catching up to us in terms of their aging process. One of my dogs developed a hearing loss. Well, my husband had developed a hearing loss. The other dog developed arthritis and she was limping. I have arthritis and occasionally I limp. And there were these common things that were happening, and suddenly my dogs had caught up with us. We were kind of aging together. So it just made me think of, and I would take them for walks in the park, and things would be slow. They no longer could chase balls. Well, I could no longer jog. There was all of these crazy little similarities, and as we got on in years. Anyway, that's how how old am I in dog years, because I just felt in a sense, a greater connection with them, than I had before. So, okay, but how did that book get published? With a lot of hard work, to tell you the truth. I, of course, as a writer, it's not something I've been doing all my life. So I am an unknown quantity out there trying to sell a manuscript of personal humorous essays. And what I discovered in the publishing world, which I knew nothing about, so it was all a big adventure, was that I had picked the worst possible genre to try and break in as an unknown author.
You mean humor?
What's that?
You mean humor?
Personal essays.
Personal essays, okay.
Personal essays, yes. And the feedback I got, and what I discovered along the way is that no one is interested in what you have to say unless you're a famous person. And I was not. So, and the other thing is I discovered too, that you cannot get to a publisher anymore without an agent. And I tried every avenue I could possibly think of to get somebody interested in me. But because I was writing personal essays and I wasn't a famous person, they didn't feel that, it would be a big seller. So What do you do then? Well, okay, the field of, what do they call it? Well, they don't call it self-publishing anymore. They call it non-traditional publishing, but it's self-publishing. And so you start to investigate, or I start to investigate that arena.
Okay.
And what you find are hundreds and hundreds of companies that are offering you these great publishing packages and are going to do everything in the world for you to help you get your book out there, market it. So then the big thing becomes, how do you choose? How do you know which one? Sam, how do you know which one to go with? And, ultimately I made my choice. I found a publishing company that I somehow felt I could trust. And I just bit the bullet and I went with them. And it turned out to be actually an incredibly positive experience. They were very, very professional. Okay. I had great editing. I had great backup in terms of with the graphics, with the cover, with the kind of type to use, and everything. It was very, very professional. So I lucked out. But I have heard horror stories, and I wound up with a very professional product, by the way, which sometimes you do not. Right. Sometimes people who have self-published have come away with less than professional looking products, let me put it that way. But it was an ordeal, and it took a long time and a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of intensity to So the big difference between traditional publishing and non-traditional publishing, of course, is that in traditional publishing, they pay you for your manuscript.
Right.
In non-traditional publishing, you pay them to take your manuscript. So you don't want to spend your money unwisely. You want to make sure you're making a reasonably good investment. And I think I was just fortunate that I did find good people to work with. And that's how the book got published, the first one. Well, ultimately, I met Ed, who's somewhere on here. And he, he came on as my marketing person. And through him, I developed other avenues of getting my name out there. I mean, on, for example, Facebook. I had no Facebook account. I had no Twitter account. I had not gotten into any of that social media venue at all. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was important. And I knew that, in the publishing business, they want you to come with a platform. They want you to come with all of this, with thousands of followers. And, so there'd be a market for your book. Well, Ed led me through all of that, and he still is, actually. And I wound up now with over 5,000 followers on Facebook and a couple of thousand followers on Twitter, because people my age don't tweet very much, except for our president, of course, but that's another story.
Yes.
But anyway, so when I was ready to put out the second book, I was much more cocky and more self-assured that, someone's gonna like this. Right. Now, and my first book won a couple of indie awards, for independent publishing awards. That's right. Mm-hmm. So, I had the Facebook platform, I had the successful first book. Surely an agent would be interested in me. No. Really? I was still doing personal essays, and it still wasn't a big go in the publishing industry. So I did the same thing for the second book too, and put it out there, with a self-publisher.
And it won the International Humor Award, right? It's won several awards. Your second book is also an award-winning book.
Yeah, the second book won actually 3 awards for humor, all with indie press. Mm-hmm. And I was very proud of that. It's not the Pulitzer Prize and it's not the Booker Award, but there is considerable competition. There's a lot of people using indie publishing right now, and there is considerable competition for these awards. So I'm kind of proud of it.
Yeah, you should be, absolutely. I mean, wow. You're doing more than people who are, let's say, part of the generation that's supposed to be doing this. You probably have more followers than many of them. So you should be very, very proud. Let's talk about the people who influenced you. You talk about Nora Ephron, and a name that most people, at least lately, I haven't heard this name in a long time, but it is Irma Bombeck. So can you talk about the people who've influenced you?
Yeah, when I first started out doing this and doing my blog and writing these essays, the person I most wanted to emulate was, in fact, Andy Rooney. I don't know if you remember him at the end of the TV show 60 Minutes.
Yes.
He'd come on, and for about 30 seconds, he would complain.
Yes.
And he would complain in a cranky, kind of like old codgery kind of way. Yeah. About something, relatively insignificant, and he would make it very funny. And I thought, hey, why not? When you reach a certain age, I think you're entitled to complain. You're entitled to air your grievances, say what you think. And, I just enjoyed him. I enjoyed him very much. He was a curmudgeon. Yes. And I wanted to be a curmudgeon.
And a New Yorker.
But I wasn't sure if women could be curmudgeons or if that was just a man thing. But Anyway, so he was one big influence on me. And of course, and Nora Ephron, definitely. I mean, her essays, she has 2 or 3 books of essays,
Yeah.
all essays that were once published in another venue. They're funny as hell. And, you know, she's a clever, she's my muse. And I don't want to be conceited enough to put myself in her category, but she's kind of what I aspire to, you know.
Mhm.
And I mean, she was so right on with the things she wrote about in terms of getting older, and particularly women getting older.
Right.
You know, when she wrote about, you know, the title of one of her essay books is "I Feel Bad About My Neck." Now, you know,
Yeah,
come
of
on,
course.
you know, which one of us
Yeah.
doesn't look in the mirror and see crepey, you know,
Right.
and start putting scarves on, you know.
Right.
I don't think you're at that point yet, but some of us are. So, I mean, it was so relatable. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
thing. They were so relatable. And she had another essay about how perfect life would be if only she could find the perfect handbag. And she wrote this whole essays about women and handbags, which again was just so relatable.
Right.
You know, and just, so I wanted my essays to be relatable. I wanted them to be, you know, relevant to women of my age,
Yes.
my age grouping anyway, and women of my generation. And so I strive for that when I write. Not everything I write is about aging,
Mhm.
but my perspective is, you know, for my whatever topic I take on, it's, you know, it's from the perspective of a woman of a certain age, let's put it that way. Irma Bombeck had the same tale. I mean, she was amazing. She was hysterically funny. And she also wrote about, hers were more focused on family and domestic matters, but highly relatable again. You know, just, she saw the humor in, you know, she wrote a lot about raising children and you know,
Right.
squabbles with her husband and chores around the house and, you know, ranges of things like that again were, you know, taking an everyday event and seeing the light side of it, you know, seeing the possibilities for making it funny. So I have to say those 3 people have been, there's another person that I came to a little bit later on, and his name is Joseph Epstein.
Okay.
And he is a very well-known essayist.
Okay.
And he also has these brilliant little vignettes of, again, everyday situations, discussions with his friends that he reports on in a very funny kind of way. And I've gained a lot from reading his material also.
I see.
So those are the people who have influenced me.
Who are your favorite comics? You know, do you like Seinfeld? Do you like the late Richard Pryor? Do you like you know, the comedy of folks like Paul Mooney, who's actually one of my favorites because he is so raw and in your face, and but makes you very uncomfortable sometimes. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe he just said that. You know?
I have to confess I'm not familiar with him.
All right.
Yeah, but no, I have a lot. And if I give you a list, I know I'm leaving at least 25 people off that list.
I see.
But yes, Seinfeld, you know, I definitely was a Seinfeld fan, or am a Seinfeld fan. He, you know, he's still out there doing stuff. I love Tina Fey. You know,
Love her.
she's incredibly clever.
Yes.
I always like Chris Rock. I like Jim Gaffigan very much. I find him hysterical.
I follow him on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Dinner with the Gaffigans.
Yeah. I had the good luck to be able to see him in concert
Wonderful.
before this COVID thing started and everything shut down. Oh gosh, I'm kind of drawing a blank, but I'm just thinking, well, I like some of the talk show hosts. I find them very funny. Like Trevor Noah. I think is very funny.
He
John
also does
Oliver.
stand up. He also does
John
stand up.
Oliver's very funny,
Yeah.
and Stephen Colbert I find very funny. And
Yes.
some of the performers on Saturday Night Live, over the years, particularly, I really, there's a lot. I mean, I don't have enough fingers and toes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You've hit on some of my favorites too, like Trevor Noah, who actually does. He also does stand up, and he's so brilliant in his comedy too. It's such a nice combination of brilliance and humor. So I love that about Trevor Noah and John Oliver. Also, he's got that British humor that is just unique on its own. So, so let's talk about the culture of the culture aspect of who you are, where you are right now, and in the space in America. So, as we think about American culture, we tend to be, we tend to disregard and devalue people as they age in our culture. People lose their jobs as they get older. They go towards more younger people. They pay them less. As people age, they're sent to nursing homes. There's this culture here in America that that once you reach a certain age, you have no more value, and especially as a woman, you are no longer attractive. You think of all these things that that make you feel less than a human being, and worse, less than a part of the society that you've been a part of. Can you talk about how that influences your writing and how that shapes you as a human being and a woman?
Whoa, that's a big one. That's a big one. Yeah, I definitely have feelings and thoughts about that. In fact, I've written at least 2 essays that I can think of off the top of my head that broach on exactly that. And one of them comes from something my husband, and I think what he did was very representative of men. We were in a restaurant, and a woman comes over and says hello to him. Mm-hmm. And at first he doesn't know who she is, and then he recognizes her and realizes it's someone he went to high school with.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And so they chat briefly, do the little reminiscing thing, and then she says goodbye and goes away. And he turns to me and says, "She used to be very pretty." And I turn around and I look at him and I go, "She is very pretty. I thought she was, seriously. This woman who approached us, the stranger, I thought she was very pretty, here and now." And I really, and then I had this whole conversation with him about it, about, not appreciating the fact that, what you have in your head, how she looked when she was 17, but none of us look like that anymore. And your standards and your perspective, as we grow older, they have to grow up, and, it moved me to write an essay about it, about saying she used to be, pretty. It's the whole judging by this, just what you said a minute ago, judging someone's appearance by other standards that no longer apply, So yeah, I have a loud voice about that. That's one thing that the whole, the whole idea of beauty, and then in the same vein, I read a magazine article in a doctor's office about this woman who was complaining. She was 50 years old, and her article was a complaint that she felt she had become invisible. And that when she walked down the street, the workmen didn't stop and whistle at her anymore. and that, well, just a bunch of examples like that, how she had become invisible because she had become middle-aged. And I thought to myself as I'm reading this was a serious article. She wasn't being funny. And I thought to myself, how sad, how incredibly sad that you feel so diminished because you're not acknowledged for these, what are they, values? Call them values. How terribly sad that is. And which moved me to write another essay, about that whole thing, about how we feel about ourselves being reflected back in the eyes of others,
Right.
And I think, it is very unfair. I think men and women are judged by different criteria as we age. I think men get away with a lot more in the sense of, if you're just talking about appearance and looks, I think, men can get the double chin and the gray hair and the little bit of bags under the eyes, and, and it seems to be more okay. Yeah. I mean, if you look on, look at TV, like all of the news anchors, and not all of the men are good looking, but all of the women are quite beautiful, right. And they all have that look, right. And, very rarely do you see an older woman who maybe put on 10 pounds and, doesn't have straight blonde hair and right. sleeveless dresses. Rarely do you see that. And I think that's, and in terms of just aging in general, and in terms of being put out to pasture, I mean, I know there are a lot of companies that still have mandatory retirement ages. And I know that can't be easy. That can't be easy. But in a sense, we do have to make room for the next generation. We really do. I don't think so much anymore, now that I'm approaching another very big birthday, that we, the idea of, being relegated to a nursing home, right. At a certain point, it's like, okay, put me on an iceberg so I could float out and die, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't see that so much anymore. And speaking of nursing homes, that was where I worked for a good part of my, my professional life. And now when I think about it, and I think the majority of the people in nursing homes were 80 plus. I see. Mm-hmm. And now I'm getting to be one of them, but it's, you're lucky if you keep your health. I think that's a huge part of it. It's better than the alternative. Yeah. Right? Absolutely. No, I look forward to birthdays now. I don't push them aside anymore. My hope is that your spirit of embracing your truth, which is loving your life and making the most of it no matter where you are, I hope that it infects our entire culture. So people don't feel stressed out, but rather, grateful for the chance of getting older and gaining wisdom. And, there's so much more to contribute. We learn so much from everybody in every age group. Everybody has something to contribute. So I really love that you highlight that positive aspect of a culture, that a part of our culture that deserves to be more prominent rather than over-sexualization of women, glorification of violence, just the great, all these other isms and issues that our society is facing. So it's very refreshing that you're bringing this to the forefront, and I hope it really catches on. Now, the title of your new book is How to Complain When There's Nothing to Complain About. You have nothing to complain about? Oh, there's always something to complain about. There's never nothing to complain about. That again, the title of the book came from the title of one of my essays that are in the book.
Mhm.
I thought it'd be a catchy title. What happened is, and getting back to the Andy Rooney, complaint department
Right.
aspect of our conversation. As I say, one of the things I aspired to was to be like him and have the freedom my age has given me to, and as my people would say, fetch. And so, I write essays of, a lot of the essays are, they are complaints, but they're funny complaints. I mean, they're not serious about, for example, I wrote about after having had cataract surgery, which is a good thing because you can see better, but it's also a bad thing because you can see better. And what I saw, was incredibly shocking. And I said, put the cataracts back. It's like, I saw wrinkles that I never saw before. I saw brown spots that I never saw before. I said, oh my God, I was Dorian Gray. It was like overnight, I just rotted. I fell apart. So, just complaining about, the result of the cataract surgery. So this happens from time to time that I am reaching a self-imposed deadline for when one of my blogs needs to be posted.
Okay.
And I don't have anything to write about. I can't think of anything. I haven't seen anything that's irritated me. Nothing terrible has happened.
Right.
It's like, life is too good right now. I've got nothing to complain about. So I wrote about having nothing to complain about. And that was really, and it, it sounds like a wonderful thing, but when you do what I do, it's really a horrible thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was complaining about, was having nothing to complain about. So hence, how to complain when there's nothing to complain about. Because without the little niggle of something, I don't have anything to write about. So.
Right, I agree. Now, what about the social issues that are going on? I mean, even in Florida, with we have a president who calls Florida home now. Not so to speak. He has a golf course there. Are those things?
May I roll my eyes?
Right. So
or do I have to pretend to be neutral?
Right. You know what? I think let's be honest. It's a tough one. So is that something? Is that something you could complain about, or is that too heavy? Is that too much?
That is heavy. I'm glad you brought that up because there are, I guess, two things that I won't touch.
Right.
And one of them is politics. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the one time I did write something that was a little more serious and a little more political, although I don't think it was radical and I don't think I said anything. In fact, I ended on let's see what happens kind of thing. I lost readers.
Oh.
And so it reinforced, my own idea that I should stay away from politics. There are people who do it and they can do it. They do it way better than I mean, the political satirists, Andy Borowitz has a wonderful fake newsletter, where he comments every single day about what's going on. And I get people like Trevor Noah, people like Bill Maher, leave it to them. It's their thing. It's what they do. And John, so politics was one and my family was another. I try not to pick on them, the one exception being my husband. And he's been a very good sport all these years, I have to say, about letting me pick on him. What was your question?
About having things to complain about, and if Trump was one of them. But you said you don't touch politics, and so
I don't write. I don't write about.
I understand. Now you have a book reading coming up on November 13th.
Yeah,
a book signing, I should say.
Well, it's a virtual signing. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but there's a couple of them coming up in November. I've never led like a Zoom talk.
Okay.
I've been on plenty of Zoom meetings and plenty of, Zoom calls, but I've never actually presented using Zoom. So I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Just something
All right.
new.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like people to take away from your book?
I would like them to buy my book. I would like
Of
them to
course.
buy both my books,
Mhm.
which are available on, may I hold them up?
Absolutely, please.
Here's How to Complain When There's Nothing to Complain About.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And here's How Old Am I in Dog Years.
I see.
And both of them are available on Amazon and other online booksellers. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever books are sold online, they are available. I think, when I don't like to, I'm not an inspirational speaker, but if I have to get, if I feel a message is in order, let me put it that way. My message to people, people in my age, baby boomers, I missed that generation by a little bit, but that we've been given through medicine and science a lot of extra years to live. And I think that it's important to find something that makes these extra years feel fulfilling and worthwhile. It certainly doesn't have to be, writing, or I'm not saying, you have to do what I do, but there are possibilities. And if you think that, there were times when I was getting this thing going, and there are still times today where I think to myself, what are you doing? What do you need this for? You're too old for this, and that whole idea of being too old, too old to start something new, too old to, try something new. And I sort of want to give myself a slap in the face and say, thanks, I needed that. And to say, no, I'm not too old. I'm really not. I still have the energy for it, the desire for it, the mental capability to do it, thank goodness. And so I think, not looking at retirement or older age as necessarily dreary. Now, I don't mean to be Pollyanna-ish about it, because, there are things I used to be able to do that I can no longer do. But I think adaptation and accommodation is part of what they call successful aging.
Yes.
So, within reason, but the idea that, you can't discover something new about yourself no matter how old you are, I think that's really what it is.
I think
that would be my message.
Okay, I think that's great. Anything else you'd like to add that I have not asked?
You could follow me on Facebook at Susan's Unfiltered Wit, or sign on to my blog. Same thing, Susan's Unwilted. Susan's Unwilted. Yeah, I'm unwilted. I'm very wilted. Susan'sUnfilteredWit.com.
Yes.
And the sign on is free. And anytime you get sick and tired of me, you can unsubscribe. But I'd love to have, more readers are welcome.
Right.
I'm thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. And I think Unwilted was a beautiful Freudian slip.
I know.
It's very apropos.
I may change the name of my blog.
That's right. Exactly. I like it. I like it.
Susan's Unwilted Fit.
That's right. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Susan. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. It was wonderful. And thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it as well. I'm Jeanette Lenoir, and this was another cultural moment with E Pluribus America. This is Our American Culture.